Pilots, what's the dumbest complaint a passenger filed mid-flight? I was flying from Denver to Miami when 30 minutes into the flight, a passenger hit the call button 17 times in a row. The flight attendant came back looking defeated and said this woman in 14B wanted to speak to the pilot immediately about an urgent safety concern. I'm thinking medical emergency, mechanical issue, maybe she saw something wrong with the wing. I had my co-pilot take over and went back to see what was happening. This woman stood up, pointed at me, and announced to the entire cabin that I was flying too high. She said she could tell because her ears popped, and that only happens when you exceed legal altitude limits. I explained that ears pop from normal pressure changes, and we were at standard cruising altitude. She pulled out her phone and showed me a compass app. This proves we're at 50,000 feet. Ma'am, that's a compass. It doesn't measure altitude. She said I was lying to cover up my reckless flying. Then she demanded I descend to a reasonable height of no more than 1,000 feet. I explained that would mean flying through buildings. She said that's propaganda from big aviation to justify their expensive fuel charges. She went back to her seat, but 5 minutes later, the attendant was back. The woman had written a formal complaint on napkins, demanding I be arrested upon landing for altitude fraud. She'd gotten 3 other passengers to sign it by telling them we were in danger. One guy asked me if it was true we were flying illegally high. I showed him the actual altitude on my tablet. He said, that's exactly what someone flying too high would say. 20 minutes later, she hit the call button again. This time she had a tape measure pressed against the window, claiming she was measuring the distance to the ground. She said based on her calculations, we were at least 70,000 feet, which was basically space. I asked how she was measuring through a window. She said she had special vision from years of yoga, but she wasn't done. She stood up and announced she was making a citizen's arrest on me for reckless endangerment. She actually tried to come into the cockpit with plastic zip ties she'd brought from home. The air marshal had to step in, and she accused him of being part of the conspiracy. She said we were all in the pocket of Big Cloud, trying to hide that planes regularly fly in illegal airspace. Then came the master plan. She tried to open the emergency exit to let in some ground-level air because the high altitude was making everyone stupid. A flight attendant tackled her, and she screamed that this was assault, and she'd sue the entire airline industry. While being restrained, she yelled that physics was a scam invented by airlines to charge more for higher flights. We had to make an emergency landing in Dallas. As they escorted her off, she kept yelling that she had evidence I'd flown above the legal limit. The evidence? Her ears had popped twice instead of once. She demanded a drug test for me, but specifically for altitude drugs. The police asked what those were. She said, if you don't know, you're not qualified to arrest me. The formal complaint she filed was incredible. It accused me of flying at 90,000 feet, breaking the sound barrier without permission, and intentionally giving passengers altitude sickness to sell more drinks. She claimed I was part of a secret program to test how high planes could fly before people noticed. Her proof? The clouds looked smaller than usual. She also included a diagram drawn on a barf bag showing how I'd secretly flown to space and back without telling passengers. The trajectory showed us doing a loop-de-loop around the moon. She calculated that we should have landed 2 hours earlier, so I must have taken a detour through the stratosphere for fun. The best part was her solution. She demanded all planes install altimeters in every seat so passengers could monitor rogue pilots like me. She wanted a constitutional amendment limiting flights to 500 feet maximum, and she insisted I pay her $50,000 for the trauma of being flown at illegal heights. The airline sent me her follow-up complaint a week later. She'd hired a lawyer who was obviously her teenage son. His letterhead was in Comic Sans and cited airplane law, which doesn't exist. He threatened to take the case to the Supreme Court of Aviation unless I admitted to flying at twice the legal height. The legal height, according to him, was whatever doesn't make ears pop. Last I heard, she was banned from all airlines after trying to bring an altitude measuring device onto a Spirit flight. The device was a yardstick taped to a level. She claimed it could detect illegal flying patterns. They found her in the bathroom trying to access the cargo hold to install it. The complaint is now framed in our break room. My favorite part is where she wrote, the pilot's refusal to fly lower proves he's hiding something, probably a second secret altitude.